Allows Student Union seeks to honor the relational treaty process in its programming, events, and meetings. Start with roll call. I am present. Regina, unfortunately, is also is absent for she's in extended absence. Dan Nicholson.
Yeah.
John Hutton. The Hoover.
Yeah.
Kathleen Reed.
Here.
Caitlin Lowe.
Here.
Dylan Ryan. Jad Sino. I have regrets from Sack and Sultana and regrets from Sam Dixon. Liam Hunt. I have regrets from Sarah Dobson, Jeremy Banks, and Drew Batcha. Anthony Sakali.
Yes.
Rebecca Howard.
Yep.
Holly Lobsinger. Michael Davies Cole.
I'm here.
Harry Maconia. Dylan Latondre.
Yep.
Amr Al-Kashab. Amina Prado.
Here.
Tori Court. Lacey Pina. Izan Matarea. Sorry, Izan Kader. Angela Hu.
She's on her way.
Corey Larson.
Hi.
Casey Moss.
Here.
Alistair Mason. Derek Morrow proxying for Laura McCaffrey.
Here.
Sarah Jaber.
Here.
Daniel Smith.
Yeah.
Brandon Poole proxying for Chris Purban. O'Shea Arifa. Corlin Turner has sent me her regrets. Katie Martel. Allison Faulkner.
Yep.
Bart Soroka. Yvette Yacoub.
Here.
Alexander Hudson.
Here.
Nazneen Sultana.
Where the
Mo Cabrera. Okay, so first of all, adoption of the agenda.
Greg, can we just hold on 1 second?
Sure.
Can I?
Yep,
No, we haven't done the.
the minutes are coming.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Just showing us.
Yeah.
Still covered. Yeah.
You can go there.
Okay. So adoption of the agenda. Be it resolved the agenda be adopted as circulated. Do I have a mover for that motion? Casey, seconded Dylan. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
Dylan Ryan.
Okay, is there any opposition to adopting the agenda as circulated? I'll take it passed by unanimous consent. Next up, minutes of the previous meeting. Be it resolved the minutes of the November 18th, 2015 council meeting be accepted. Do I have a mover for that? Moved by Dylan. Do I have a seconder for it? Anthony and Michael, I believe you wanted to make an amendment to the minutes.
Yes, unfortunately my regrets came in late because I was in class. So I did send them in, but I didn't put that
Yep.
in the minutes.
And so I indicated to Michael, and I'd rather it not be a continuing situation that we're having where we're discussing at council, but I did indicate to you in the email, and I think it's fair, that you could bring it up at council, but in the future, I do need to get the regrets beforehand. So I'm letting council decide on that, as Michael stated. Is there any opposition? Well, first of all, so moved by Michael to amend the minutes so that he sent his regrets in there. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Dan? Okay, is there discussion on that amendment?
Can I just
Yeah.
clarify? Like,
Yeah.
did you send it to you before the meeting or?
No. Yeah.
No, I couldn't. I was in class back to back and I had no chance to, so.
So we'll take a vote on the amendment there. All those in favor of the amendment? Okay, motion passes. Are there any other amendments to the minutes? Is there any opposition to adopting the minutes as amended? Yeah, Dylan?
Oh, any other changes to the agenda?
Sorry, we passed the agenda already.
Pass that.
Yeah, this is the minutes now. Sorry, is there opposition to adopting the minutes as circulated and then amended? Okay, we'll take it passed by unanimous consent. Next up, communications received. I have a report sent to me by John and also a report sent to me by Anthony that they have asked me to circulate. So to do that, as I've informed you before, I need a 2/3 majority from council. Can I get a motion to circulate those? Harry, can I get a seconder for it? Caitlin? And is there any discussion on that? Okay, is there any opposition to, yeah, John?
I brought physical copies of my report. If anybody doesn't have one, just raise their hand. I have a few more.
What?
Okay, so is there any opposition to circulating the reports of both John and Anthony for the Board of Governors Caucus and the BP Academic? So I will circulate those digitally, and thanks, John, for circulating the paper copies. Next up, appointments, new committee appointments. One councillor, sorry, has been sent. So one council member of the Ad Hoc Governance Review Committee. So I guess if the chair of the committee could just explain what's going on, then is that the chair?
Yeah, that's no problem. So one of our members is leaving us, and we have an empty vacancy. This member that is currently on the review committee, their school term or their in-class term is up, and I believe they will just be out of the city and unavailable to continue to attend the governance review committee meetings. And so that's the reason for the vacancy.
Okay.
Point of information. So to clarify, the governance review committee has no.
Pardon me?
The governance review
Yeah, that's-
committee
yeah.
now has no.
Yes.
Will as of January 1st.
Well,
As of January 1st. Can you clarify what the governance review committee does?
Yeah, sure. So right now we're meeting on a weekly basis to go over and discuss the results of the governance review that was undertaken by an external third-party firm. And so they made a series of recommendations to our governing practices, our bylaws, policies. And so this is a committee that was struck about a month and a half ago to kind of comb through all of them. There are a lot. There are a lot of comments, notes, recommendations. So to comb through all those, and then come to council with a comprehensive package and presentation, and that's kind of what we're doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask that reasonable effort be made to have an Aboriginal representative on that committee?
I believe there is already a self-identified. Yeah, it's fine.
You? Awesome. Cool.
Okay, so before we proceed to the appointments, are there any other questions on the committee itself or what it does? I think Dan kind of explained it there pretty well. Okay, so moving on to appointments. I will need, so it needs to be a councillor. Yeah, any nominations for appointments to that? Barry?
I'm gonna nominate Dylan Brand.
Dylan, okay. And you accept the nomination, Dylan?
I do.
Okay. Bart?
Isn't it appropriate to nominate myself?
No, it's not.
I would nominate myself.
Yeah. Okay. Any other nominations? Okay, so the way this proceeds, I have to ask 3 times. Are there any nominations from the floor for the position of Governance Review Committee Councillor? Second time, any other nominations from the floor for councillor member of the Governance Review Committee? Third time, any other nominations from the floor for the Governance Review Committee? Okay, seeing none, so we'll proceed to have the candidates motivate for why they will want the position. So it's one at a time, everyone has to leave the room, but it is not in camera. And it is by alphabetical last name. So Dylan, that's you first. So Bart, if you could leave the room and then Dylan will get you when he's at his turn. So Dylan.
I'm gonna grab my coffee. Sorry.
No worries. So Dylan, you'll have an opportunity just to motivate for why you want this position and why you think you'd be good for it, and then it'll be followed by a brief question and answer period.
Cool. I don't know. I've been involved in a lot of DSU councils before. I've been involved in policy review. Anyone that was on council knows, or last year, sorry, knows that I reviewed and edited the elections policy pretty heavily. I don't know. I think I have reasonable experience and have a good head for I don't know, getting this done in a quick manner.
Okay, thanks Dylan. Other questions for Dylan? Any questions for Dylan? Okay, seeing none, Dylan, if you could grab Bart. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thanks for doing that. DSU's coming back.
No, DC's got you.
I think both were appropriate.
This is Torrin.
Okay, so Bart, you're familiar with the drill, just to motivate for why you want the position, why you think you'd be good for it, and then followed by brief questions.
For sure. So the reason I want the position is twofold. It comes from legal experience of normative and positive law. I want to explain those terms. So basically, the positive law is logistically why it makes sense. At the end of the day, when these reports come forward, I'll be one of the many people who have a lot of discussion and ideas about them when they come to the board. I'd rather have that done at the discussion phase with the review committee, because I don't have to waste everybody's time here with my various ideas and opinions. As far as the normative aspect goes, why I'd be good at it, I've done stuff like this for years and years and years as far as review goes. I've rewritten constitutions for my student union back at the University of Regina. I've written constitutions for student groups as far as even type 2 societies, arts organizations, science organizations, engineering organizations. I have a huge background in this sort of area of discussion. And so I think between my background and the fact that I'd rather have it done at the front end than the back end are probably my two main areas of why I would be the best choice for this position.
Thanks, Bart. Are there any questions for Bart? Any questions?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you sit on a council committee already?
Right now I sit on the external committee with John.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Bart. So we'll proceed to an in-camera discussion on the candidates. So if you are not a member of council, if you could please leave, and if the camera could be turned off as well, please.
I have.
Did you?
I give you one.
Because I'm a 19 person. I knew everything.
I wanted to make it polished, not upstairs. Get the names up on
I'm loving the Wednesday.
Thank you. Michael, look.
I know, I saw that earlier, you didn't see me do the thumbs up. I'm wearing my track PJs.
Okay. Oh, Angela?
Coffee and no one's going down everybody's back.
And Angela. Thanks.
There's a.
First one here, I was like, digging the
So what happened?
Yes.
We haven't actually left.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I know Angela, did Angela step out for a second? Has everyone else voted? Dylan, do you see a ballot there next to you for Angela's seat? It's been, it's a good person. Yeah. I didn't maybe I'd like to wait for her to get back, just I don't know where she went. You don't have her number?
Yeah, I do. Oh, I'll go for her.
And the candidates can appoint a scrutineer as well. Bart, Dylan, you guys can appoint a scrutineer if you'd like.
I'm good. How would I point Dylan as my scrutineer?
I reject that nomination.
Corey, do you know where she is?
Yes. Suzanne, did you vote?
I'm gonna lose by one vote and be like, ah!
Amar, you don't wait for
Destruction of democracy.
You didn't vote? Well,
Where is Angela? Does someone know where Angela is? Did she come in?
She did come here.
Was she here for the candidates?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay, let's. I think it's fine.
Yeah, okay guys, so I'm just gonna proceed to count. Kaylee?
she may have already also
I was just gonna say, we can do some full back.
Because you can have smaller, a wall of windows in your office, just like.
We're gonna go with the bigger one.
And by bigger, I mean like quite a bit.
Okay, well, we're making an executive decision.
Like, I've been out Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Wednesday, Thursday, but like, I can't change anything. So it helps me like this.
Okay, congratulations, Dylan. Yes, can I get a motion to ratify that appointment, Harry? Seconded Bart. All those in favor of the motion to ratify Dylan for the committee effective January 1st? Okay, any opposed? Motion passes. So next up on the agenda, we have, I believe, the governance, presentation of governance review. Just taking that. Okay. So Kaylee, you have, yay.
Sorry, just. Yeah, you can probably just pass it over.
You lined up.
I made this presentation in Google Slides, which is the first time I've used Google Slides.
I never tried it before. How is it?
It was
Really
good.
PowerPoint, maybe you just hate PowerPoint. That's the issue. It's deep-seated problem.
Okay, folks. So as
Is this going to be available to distribute, or should I take like detailed notes?
we can distribute it to council, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
So, as folks know, I'm the policy research coordinator for the student union, and so I resource this committee, which means that I help with initial drafts of bylaw amendments and help guide the committee's work. So I'm going to do this presentation, and then committee members might have things to add if folks have questions. And there's a comment sheet that will go around that people can fill out now or on their own time. But I'll explain that towards the end. So just to give an overview, the council approved a governance review in April 2015, and the law firm DLA Piper was engaged to review the union's bylaws and policies. That work was completed by DLA Piper in August, as some of you will remember from the presentation that we had in September, I think. And then the government review committee was appointed in August to draft a new set of bylaws that are to be presented to council before January 31st, so that they can go to a general meeting and represent the new governing board and statement documents of the union. So the governance review committee has been meeting weekly over the past few months and reviews different elements of the bylaws and policies at each of those meetings. We've also had meetings with the chair of the board of operations, the VP Finance and Operations, and the both incoming and outgoing chief returning officers of the union. And the committee members are Dan, Michael Davies-Cole, and Daniel Smith. So I'm going to go through a series of major proposals. Hopefully you can, if you have any questions during this part, just kind of wait till the end. The idea is to, if you have any questions about what the committee's deliberations have been, they can be asked now, but in terms of comments or concerns about the actual proposals, that's what the comment sheets are for, so that you can take kind of what's being proposed, think about it a bit, and then if you have concerns or comments, you can write them down and the committee can then consider them. So starting with the executive, one of the major proposals is to remove the officer distinction. So right now there are two different sets of people in the executive. There's all the executive committee members, and then there's the officers who have, based on the governance review, kind of the set of duties that's assigned to the officers is not really seen as substantial, and so doesn't need its own separate distinction. The next thing is defining clear duties for the executive. So one of the major comments throughout the governance review is that there's not clear areas of decision making for each of the different governing sections of the union. So the executive actually has the power to do everything that council has the power to do, except change policy or deal with the budget, or change policy or approve the budget, and do anything that expressly goes against the will of council. And that's actually really vague and could create a lot of conflict if there was differences between what the executive wanted to do and what council wanted to do. And so a better model that has been suggested is that there be a defined set of duties for the executive. So there's clear limits on what the executive can do, and that council has a defined set of responsibilities that it has to be responsible for. And then the general membership has another set of duties that it's responsible for. The other thing is to include benefits in the bylaws for the executive. So executive committee members do receive the mandatory benefits that full-time staff receive, and have the option to enroll in the optional benefits that full-time staff have the option to enroll in. And so that is just being codified in the bylaws, which is it's already a practice. And the members of the committee actually recommended and suggested that an additional benefit be added, which would include a universal bus pass, that the union would cover the cost of a U-Pass for executive members. Oh, sorry, my computer. So the next thing is the Board of Operations. So the committee's operating on the intention of dissolving the Board of Operations. To replace the duties of the Board of Operations, there would be two new committees struck. So the Budget Committee and the Bylaw and Policy Review Committee. And then the sponsorship element of the Board of Operations duties would go under the responsibilities of the Grants Committee, and so the Grants Committee would then become the Grants and Sponsorship Committee. Issues around human resources and contract review would move to the executive, and there would be a better defined role for council in terms of budget and procurement policy. So in the area of contracts, council would essentially have set out procurement policy, so the policy by which we all our contracts have to abide by. So that kind of high level decision making about, we need to aim for there to be, for example, if we wanted our contracts to prioritize student jobs, we could put it in that policy, and then the executive would be responsible for negotiating contracts within that policy, similar to what we saw within the way that the most recent version of the Board of Operations, or the request for proposals procedure went forward. This is one of the areas that we've seen in terms of the there not being clarity between the Board of Operations and Council. Folks who have been around the table for a while will know that the RFP process for the travel cut space has been kind of difficult to get through, and part of that is because there's not defined areas where each part of the governance structure is supposed to be contained within. The overall feeling around the Board of Operations is that it was created to streamline things and has actually made things more difficult, and that what we actually need to be doing is engaging more people in the work of the student union through committees like the Budget Committee and Bylaw and Policy Review Committee, so that we can actually have an engaged process around those two elements, which are the main things that the BOPS deals with. The Judicial Board, so this is another recommendation around dissolving the Judicial Board. The Judicial Board deals mostly with election appeals, but also has the power to interpret the bylaws for the organization. And in the governance review, it was revealed that this is a very concerning approach. But in the review, the legal team said, we assume that there's a reason why you have this in place, and so we're not going to say that you should remove it, but here are some concerns we have about it, and you should really limit its scope. But in the committee's deliberations, it's been identified that this is kind of a problematic approach to interpreting the bylaws. The interpretation of the bylaws is actually the responsibility of the council, and more broadly the responsibility of the membership, and we've actually removed that responsibility from a representative body like the council and put it in the hands of a limited group of 3 law students, and so there were concerns around that. And then there was also a point made that if we need professional advice, we should go to professionals. If we need legal advice about whether or not what our bylaws say, we should seek the advice of lawyers, not rely on law students who can't actually provide legal advice. In order to have that happen, though, there needs to be some kind of appeals committee within the election framework, and so the research on that item is ongoing, but there would still be an appeals committee that would deal with appeals at the election, in terms of elections that went beyond the scope of the elections committee. So this is a big one. The committee has discussed reducing the number of councillors from 42 to 26. This would be achieved by eliminating all council positions that are appointed by council, so that's the members at large, essentially moving to a system where each faculty would get 1 representative, and each community would get 1 representative. And then the executives would sit on the council. The Board of Governors representatives would remain on the council. But the Senate representatives would no longer be on council because there's going to be 20 or so Senate representatives, and so they'll actually form a new and more robust Senate caucus that will also replace the academic committee. There's also, the committee has discussed the addition of a Students with Disabilities representative, identifying that that's a community that's not represented around the table. So this would overall reduce the amount of councillors from 42 to 26. Now, the second proposal around council is a large change in the way that councillors are elected. One of the things that was identified by there were two things with council identified in the governance review. One was that appointing council appointing councillors to itself is actually really encourages a kind of insularness that is not appropriate, and that the way that we decide which society is represented around the table also is encourages a certain insular approach, because the societies that are at the table are unfairly advantaged to remain at the table. Whereas if another society were to come, they actually don't have an opportunity to be represented. So the proposal, and this proposal, if it were to pass, would not be in place until elections 2017. And what would happen is that all faculty and community reps would be elected through a central election. That central election would be limited to, it wouldn't mean that everyone could vote for the medicine rep, for example. Only medical students could vote for the medicine rep, but there would be essentially, instead of it happening at your societies where those elections would happen, they would happen through a more general election. And one of the things that the committee has deliberated on in its meetings is that a lot of you folks serve on council in addition to your roles at your society, and that often means that you kind of see or have to kind of put DSU business and DSU council second. And so what we're hoping is through this process we would have people who are dedicated to a DSU council focus, and it would also mean that there is a process and a necessity for the representatives that are around the table to have representation regardless of whether or not there's an active society. So in some cases, some representatives have not been elected because there hasn't been a active society, and so this would make sure that happened regardless. We still are figuring out what is possible with determining voters lists and if we can get voters lists for all the different communities, and that might change what the final proposal looks like. And societies may want to include whoever is elected to this body in their own society structure. So you might decide that, okay, well, whoever is elected to the DSU rep position would have a position on our executive or on our council, but it wouldn't be the other way around, where it is now, where some of you hold positions within your society that make you automatically have to be on council, and it wouldn't be mandatory. So you wouldn't have to have that representative on your executive. It would be up to you and your society. So those are the big picture major changes. I'm going to go through some of the other changes because there's a lot of really nitty-gritty things, but here are some things that you'll see that there's lots going on, not just major changes. So the repealing the union rules and procedures policy, including provisions including provisions in the bylaws about any rules of order. So that kind of gets rid of that whole chaos that is the URPP. Similar thing with the constitution policy. The plan is to move substantial parts of the elections policy, executive policy, and committee policy to bylaws, because those are actually core elements of our structure and need to have protection that bylaws offer. Including conflict of interest provisions in the bylaws. Currently there's no conflict of interest provisions. It's a huge oversight and we need to make sure that there's something in there. Redefining policies. So right now our policies are defined mostly as issues policies in the bylaws, but then our actual policies are mostly operational policies. So what this would do is create two kinds of policies, operations policies and issues policies. And operations policies would require a supermajority of 2/3, whereas issues policies could be changed more flexibly with a simple majority. Moving the AGM to September and requiring that the general members approve financial statements instead of council. This is an important part of an improved financial accountability process. Connecting the content of the DSU Act to the bylaws. So the DSU is actually formed by an act in the legislature of the province, and there are elements in that act that have changed, the operations of the DSU have changed over the past 50 years, and so we need to make sure that our bylaws are reflecting what the act says, but updating it. So for example, needing to make sure that we define the positions that are named in the act in our bylaws so that we know that the secretary and treasurer in the act is actually the VP Finance and Operations. So there's some things like that. We need to fix some things around signing authority to be in compliance with the act, that kind of issued. And then clarifying the bylaw on membership. So that will mean that the membership bylaw will better reflect the situation, which is that all Dalhousie students are members of the DSU, and then as a member you have to pay a fee. As we've talked about in terms of the DASA MOU, this would also allow for, the proposals would also allow for council to offer a reduced distance fee for those students who are studying on campuses outside of the HRM. So here's just the timeline. So tonight, someone is going to notice a motion to amend the bylaws. We're hoping to have a full package by the January 14th council meeting, where council will consider only a motion to refer bylaw amendments to the Board of Operations. Then between January 14th and 24th, I guess the 15th and the 24th, BOPS and legal counsel will review the bylaw amendments. And then council will consider a motion to refer bylaw amendments to the AGM January 27th, and then there'll be an annual general meeting in February to consider the amendments. That's really soon, and we're not necessarily as far along in the process as we'd like to be, and so this might be pushed back a bit, but this is kind of a hopeful timeline so that we can get this done early in the semester, and we're not having to try and convene a general meeting late in the semester. Yeah, and so maybe just like a motion to extend for a couple.
Sure, 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, motion to extend by 5 minutes. Hammer, seconded.
Question
Liam.
about the society rep.
Sir, we're just going to extend by 5 minutes now, and we'll have a question period after. Sorry, Hammer. Dylan, seconded by Yazan. Is there any opposition to 5 minutes extension? Okay.
So before we get into any questions, there's a series of questions that have been drafted to get feedback from counselors, specifically around clearing up decision-making structures and the composition of council, as well as any other issues that folks might have. And then there's an option to include your name and contact information if you want to meet with the committee. So these are for people to take. And if you fill them out now, we'll take them now. If you want to fill them out a different time and drop them by the office, that's an option.
I have 2 questions.
Yeah, okay, so questions, Amber and then Bart.
Okay, first question about the elections, the society elections. You said they're going to be done in a more general way. What do you mean? Is it going to be done under supervision of the DSU? Are they going to be done online? Like, I didn't quite get that. And also, the presentation, will the counselors have a copy so that they can go through it later?
Yeah, I did say that, that we would distribute it. I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in, just that the elections would be administered by the DSU. We haven't gotten to election policy and what that will look like, but the idea is that instead of the elections happening, for example, at a society AGM, they would happen as part of the general elections that happens, that the DSU runs in the spring. Excuse me.
Bart?
Hey, sorry. So I'll keep this specifically to the sheet. A, is there an electronic version if my handwriting is garbage and I don't want you to have to read it? I can just type it up to you and email you.
Sure.
And then B, on top of that, are only members of council allowed to fill this out, or can I distribute it and have other members of my organization that I represent fill it out and maybe come and talk about the review?
I think for now, the committee only talked about counselors, and so the committee would have to have a broader discussion about that, I think. But Dan?
It might be appropriate to circulate this to your membership, and then they can pose questions to you to have in here, and then you could meet with a counselor to discuss their constituency's concerns.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Liam?
If there's no Senate rep at the table, who's going to liaise between council and Senate rep?
So the vice president, academic and external, who will chair the Senate committee, can be that sort of liaison point. I don't know if you had other insights into how that would work.
Well, pretty much how it works now. Like the Senate caucus is usually, I'm trying to think what's been this semester, but I give it mostly report and senators or other committees will give it.
Yeah.
We just synthesize committee minutes and the report, and that would just give us.
Also note that the president will also be on that Senate caucus and then also on the council.
The draft that we're working with right now, it also includes written reports from both the Board of Governors caucus and the Senate caucus, and so it would also create a better paper record for so people would receive, council would receive written reports from both of those caucuses.
Jad and Casey.
Just going back to the concept of electing the representatives on council, will that all happen at one time? Is that sort of what you were imagining, that it would all happen simultaneously along with the DSU elections? Or would it happen, or would it just be that whatever faculty or society would have to just go through the DSU in order to post their elections whenever it's convenient for them?
It would happen all at the same time.
When we talked about, especially in like architecture and co-op programs and stuff like that, that if there was needed to be like a by-election, so we would run them when everyone else was doing their debates. So anyone that would be like at the Sexton debates would also be, the council positions would also be at those debates. And then if those needed to get filled or anything like that, then that would, it's not like we've gotten through that, but then they would get filled then. So when everyone was voting for the president of the DSU and all the vice presidents and stuff like that, they would also see in their, if they were part of the faculty of architecture and planning or the faculty of dentistry, they would see that show up on, they would see these, which of these people do you want to vote for? And their bios and everything would be on the page and the same kind of thing.
Casey and then Derek.
I was just wondering why why we're thinking it's necessary to change the council member, like why does it have to be at like a general thing as opposed to at our own society? Like I understand shortening it like to 26 people. I'm just confused about that.
Okay, I'll just field that question. One of the things is that in all societies, no matter how they break up, you're still missing people.
Yeah.
The school at large actually has its own database of who is what and who identifies as what, and that's an actual better way to pick up the full demographic and not just the people that are able to make it to the meetings or know the people that go to the meetings or aware of it. There are, in a perfect world, you would hope that everybody could show up to all your meetings and everybody would know everything that's going on. But you're not, this is a better way to pick up some of the people, especially off-campus people and stuff like that, that aren't around, that may be slipping through the cracks, and this is an electoral process. And it also takes it to a more fair process, because it would move it towards what's done more towards, provincial, like the kind of election.
Right,
kind of
but
thing.
the faculty, I was more referring to like the faculty ones, like
Okay.
faculties aren't being missed or anything.
I could touch on that. It's for people like architecture and planning. We have two societies under the same faculty, so then it makes it so that we're not it's not always going to be an architecture rep because it's in our constitution to like send someone to the DSU and it's not in the planning one. So it's just because we have more people, but there may be someone that's better suited for it in planning that can also do the same job, the same issues. They go to the same meetings. And things like
Thanks.
that.
So next up I have Derek.
I may have just missed this, but are we also, through this grand electoral process, competing against each other for spots at the DSU meetings? Like, would there ever be a situation where, say, like engineering or medicine wouldn't be able to get a person on because, say, that they lost their spot to arts and social sciences rep or something like that? No, so there's like guaranteed positions, guaranteed seats for everything.
Why faculty?
Yeah, but for example, one of the areas where there would be consolidation is that it wouldn't necessarily be, it could be someone in the diploma program or someone in the four-year program that was won the engineering site, or the seat. The other thing I didn't mention in the presentation is that, or it was in the presentation but I didn't mention it, is that the committee has also discussed allowing both undergraduate and graduate students to represent, to sit as representatives of faculties.
Okay, so I have Dylan and then Bart. I'm just giving first speakers.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Dylan, sorry, you did have your hand up, right?
Yeah. So I see this as a good thing. So what I understand then was for Aboriginal students, you would access those people who have self-identified in their application to Dalhousie.
Yes.
Okay, so that's helpful because I recognize that it's difficult for a lot of Aboriginal students to make it to our meetings. That being said, we have also identified a clear issue with the self-identification process where members don't recognize what their self-identifying means, and they're actually discouraged from self-identifying because of the fact that they feel that people will judge them or think that they've gotten into Dalhousie because they self-identified, when that process is completely separate, right? So Dalhousie as a university has an issue where they haven't explained clearly enough what that self-identification means. So there are a significant amount of Aboriginal students who don't self-identify, and we're working on resolving that issue, but it is a known issue. So that's a concern that I have, and I'm not sure if there's a response.
I think that in that instance, there's kind of a twofold response. One would be from on the DSU side, one would actually be on the Native unit side. There's a lot of work to do on the Native unit side, but on the DSU side, it would also mean that when this happens, and it's also going to go hand in hand with the big changes in the Senate, is that there's going to be a lot of information given to the students, and I think at that time there's a good chance to allow the students to understand that this is a way of being counted and not being counted out, and I understand, trust me, I totally understand about the not wanting to self-identify, but if they realize that it's under a closed situation, this is not something that is going to be like put up on a wall and everybody goes, oh, guess what, Dylan's Native. It's going to be something that is totally internal through an electoral process, and that's where it's held at. And totally, and this is something that a lot of them would actually benefit in more ways than just an electoral thing if they do it.
Yeah. So and I do sorry if I can.
Yeah.
I do recognize that it's beneficial to self-identify. I want to make sure that there's an avenue by which students who have not self-identified to participate in our process.
The thing is, though, if they don't self-identify, then they would not have voted for the Aboriginal position in the first place.
Guys, sorry, I hate to cut you off, but this is a really important discussion, but I just want to emphasize that when it comes to a lot of the nuts and bolts of some of these, there's going to be a lot of input to come.
Yeah, we haven't done
the
that.
sheets getting handed out, remember that there's going to be a chance for you to, enter your issues on that, etc. But
Thank you, Chair.
totally fair point, yeah. Yes, Holly.
Yeah, I just want to clarify on how the community reps are elected. So what I was understanding from that conversation was that like self-identified Aboriginal students would be electing an Aboriginal rep. Would that be the same for the women's rep? So self-identified like women?
Yes.
And also, is that just through the recent like census, or does Dalhousie already have that?
I've been in touch with the registrar, we're still trying to figure out what the capabilities are of the voting lists, and we're trying to figure out how we can, for example, make sure that people can identify to be included in those voting lists, and for example, that folks have the opportunity to self-identify as women, even if they're the gender marker on their file is different. Same with there's a key issue on the LGBTQ front and whether or not what the self-identification is like that. I've been trying to get a hold of the registrar, and I don't know why they haven't gotten back to me, but we're persistent about trying to figure out how to make that happen.
Just briefly to touch on your point about the census and about self-identifying. So the census actually, which everyone should fill it out, absolutely, but the census is actually not a self-ID form. So by you filling out the census, you're not marking down on your file that you identify with a certain group or not. That's through a separate structure, also on Dell Online. But it would be, so when you would have applied and accepted your offer and gotten processed at Dell, there would have been an opportunity, and I think there's always an opportunity for you to do so online. I apologize, I don't know the exact route and structure of how you do that, but it would be separate from the census.
So I have Harry and then Bart, and then I think, and then Jad, sorry, I had your hand up again, and then I think we should kind of look at moving on in the agenda. So Harry?
I guess the only thing was have you considered quorum at all? And how low that'll get with 26 councillors proposed?
We haven't talked about it.
Good question.
But if we wanted to make quorum higher, we could make quorum higher.
Yeah.
We could make it 2/3 or so.
Bart?
Okay, so I have a bunch of questions, and if I go outside of the realm that we're supposed to be questioning on, i.e. just the process, let me know and I'll just fill it in here. One of my first ones, when it comes to discussions about the executive, especially the officer distinction, has there been discussions about what each of the executive positions entail, and maybe if there should be a splitting of some and a combining of others? Has that been on the table at all?
So not in any like official capacity. I think there hasn't. I mean, like we talked a little bit about duties and responsibilities and like the issues that arise with the current system and how there is a lack of that sort of defined structure and how that not only makes it difficult for the counselors, but it makes it difficult for the executives as well. I mean, to answer your question simply, no, there hasn't been any official conversation around it. I don't know.
The intention of the governance review was not necessarily to review that kind of thing. It was to make sure that we were in compliance with best practices for nonprofit organizations.
Okay, that's good. When it comes to the judicial board, has there been discussion about how there's a difference between, this is not elitist because I'm a law student, I'm really sorry, I apologize. There's a difference between an educated opinion on what governance is and what a general member of the public has and understands what governance is, i.e. I don't think there's any 1Ls on the judicial board, but every student in 1L has a base education on interpretation of statutes, etc., which I think is important for the interpretation. And so, while I do agree that the whole 3 students mandating is problematic, I do think that there's a difference between the 3 students that are appointed to that committee versus the entire board. I'm just wondering if that's been part of the conversation.
You're wording your questions really well, Bart. If there's been discussions about it, they are kind of going beyond just process, though.
Okay. Sorry, I apologize.
Yeah. Michael?
I just want to, as the 1L on the group there too,
Oh, there is?
I'm sitting on a bunch of hats. Yes, there's been a lot of discussions about it, and we're still working on it. But the discussion, we've discussed totally about the actual opinion versus, what we've learned, what we even a 1L learn, versus what a lawyer knows and what they're allowed to say and what happens at the end of the day. So that's where our discussions are now, basically we're weighing out what would happen if you actually do need legal advice and it needs to stand up against something, that it actually has to be legal advice that's allowed to be listed as such. And I know you understand what I mean by that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So therefore, we have been in a lot of discussions over it.
All right.
Sorry, Daniel, did you?
I was pretty much going to say the same thing. Anything big enough to send to judicial board, we may as well just send to our lawyer that we employ. So.
Okay, I'll cut the road short and just submit it as questions and maybe discuss it more when it comes up. Though the only other thing I wanted to mention for maybe thought of the board is that when it comes to the election stuff, the DSU should not have representation on our individual boards. Our individual groups should have representation to the DSU, and that's why I think maybe their election stuff is misguided. But other than that, I'll fill it out in the form.
Thanks, Bart. And sorry, I appreciate the understanding, but I am
Yeah,
just trying to keep
no,
things
that's totally fair.
Can I just add a process thing?
Yeah.
I don't know that folks haven't received the full set of comments, and if people do want to come in and look at some of those, that would be helpful. But on that specific issue, one of the issues that was identified in the governance review is that this structure would be under corporate law in some provinces and federally illegal. So it's also just I've been identified more broadly in the legal framework that it's not the way that's what we've been told, is that that's not the way to go. If people have other thoughts, the committee wants to hear them, but that's, in terms of the legal advice we received, that was what was said.
Is that for the review committee or for the board composition?
That's for the board composition, yeah.
Okay, Jad.
I'm realizing my question probably will not be answered, but I'm just gonna, throw it out here. In terms of the elections process, will you take into mind the fact that people aren't necessarily only in one faculty, for example? So will they receive the link if they have a minor in, philosophy, and so will they be able to vote for an arts rep if they were a major in science, for example? And what are you thinking to decide that someone ought to be represented by that faculty or not? And on that note, part of DAS is that a plethora of our students are King's students. So will they even be receiving those links to begin with because they aren't registered under Dalhousie? So will they not be able to vote for a representative in FAS, who ultimately is most of their degree is part of FAS? So I just think that if you're only going to go by what's on Dalhousie, they may not necessarily receive those links? I don't know, so I'm just inquiring about that.
I think that'd be a good discussion to have and bring in you to talk about it, but not here.
Okay.
2 years ago when we did general DSU elections, through like society elections through the DSU process, King students were able to vote in the DAS elections.
Okay, guys, I think we should move on with the agenda. Thanks for the presentation, Kaylee, and the members of the committee. So we're moving on to reports of committees. And I'll just say, and I said this in one of the emails, I hate to be the guy who always kind of people off, but it is a time of year where a lot of us are busy. So for the reports of committees and other reports, if we could just keep things as minimalist as we can, I think we would all appreciate it. So first up, the Board of Governors Caucus, and that report was circulated by Anthony earlier. Anthony, you have a report. Thanks.
So we just wanted to highlight a couple of the items that Anthony wrote in the report, just because we did get that to you guys a little bit late, aka a lot late. So what Anthony highlighted at the last Board of Governors meeting, because Dan wasn't able to make it, was just that the sexual assault phone line funding had been renewed from the university. Sub renovations are going well, and we invited board members to come for a tour of the sub when more of the renovations are complete, so they can see what work has been done. That we discussed the tuition resets and the impact that would have on students, and Dan, Anthony, and myself are going to meet with the budget advisory committee either this Friday or next Friday to chat more about that. We also talked about the anti-discrimination efforts that are happening in light of recent global events, and as well the DSU investment review committee.
So during the board meeting last Tuesday, some of you may know there was the Divest DAL put on a process to essentially mark the 1-year anniversary of when the board voted against divesting. And I had met with them prior to the meeting, and we actually read off a statement to the Board of Governors on their behalf. Not too much to mention there. Again, I'll leave it for the report if you want to look at it. But we did basically invite that any further like information or presentations that they want to have, I think it'd be relevant to like also bring it to DSU Council just for communication and input from folks around the table. But I mean, some interesting stuff. Again, we had some follow-up conversations as well. So a little piece in that in the report. Also regarding, so the board committee, there's one of the committees, Capital Facilities and Projects Committee. Traditionally, for the past 2 years, there has been a student representative. We did appoint one person to that position, but we're going to need to put in somebody else, basically sometime in January. So Dan has a little bit on that. We did mention that, so take a look at it. I think Dan's going to be kind of leading the appointment process, but just to let you guys know, and especially with all of the activity happening around capital projects right now, we think it'll be really important to have a student representative there. And based on the recommendation of the board and consistent with past years, it will definitely be an engineering student. A couple notes there from President Florazone's report. One of the interesting things I'll mention now is that so the Executive Director of Diversity and Inclusiveness, that they were so they have hired someone or put out kind of an offer to somebody that's supposed to be filled by December, and again, they'll be the person that's kind of leading, prioritizing and implementing the recommendations that came out of the task force on misogyny, sexism, and homophobia. And regarding the meeting last Tuesday, there was a lot of conversation around mental health. The workplace survey data came out, so we got to see kind of firsthand just folks, employees, staff, faculty of the university that have disclosed depression, anxiety, and obviously we chatted around mental health, the services that are available on campus right now, and kind of the steps we're trying to take to enhance that. So there's, that came up a lot in a lot of different areas. Right now we have a meeting set up over the next couple of weeks to meet with the CEO of the Mental Health Foundation of Nova Scotia, just to see what kind of relationships we can make there between that and the university. And actually the last thing that I'll just quickly add that came out of the President's report, but obviously with the new federal government in place, there were 16 DAL alumni that were elected to this new government, and we kind of had a presentation at the last board meeting on kind of how some of those folks will be of interest to not just us and our university, but other universities, and a number of areas we're looking to advance and kind of collaborate with them. A lot more information in the report, so I'll leave it at that if anybody has any questions directly.
Thanks. Any questions? Yeah.
I guess it's more of a point of information. Last year, Dalhousie, we did endorse divestment, did we not?
The
Student union? Yes, yeah, sorry, that's what I meant. And how does that relate with your guys' position and how we expect you guys to represent students at that table? I guess my question is, do you guys support divestment, or can we expect you to support divestment, or are you completely separate from that and you vote as you wish?
Cool. So, I mean, I'll speak on behalf of myself. I don't know if you want to ask Dan or Rebecca. I mean, we've spoken about it, and we definitely support divestment. We support, especially the efforts that they've made have been absolutely amazing. I mean, that first kind of meeting, I sat down with them. We went through the report that came out last year. One thing that we did have to mention, so in the report that came out last year, the Board of Governors made 2 recommendations, and thus far, like, we've agreed that essentially they've held true to the 2 recommendations. Which were essentially, creating a separate portfolio for endowments free from fossil fuel industry for donors that are interested in doing that, and kind of their, transparency and whatnot. But the conversation that we had with folks from Divest is that we're not really at a point right now where we want to open up conversation with the Board of Governors. They're kind of either on the side of, either we're going to divest or not. The truth is, at this point, I don't know what it will take, but in terms of voting for or against divestment, I don't know if that's going to be something that actually gets put on the Board of Governor table. I mean, I think that's why I wanted to have, I think the step moving forward would be to have those folks from Divest. I think we're going to attend one of their meetings that are coming up, but I think it would be important to bring them here to talk about that before it maybe goes back to the Board of Governors, because again, I mean, I think that would be the correct process to bring it to council first, have councilors vote on something like that, and also to be able to bring in the insights of folks, and we've heard from a number of students in different faculties who do oppose divestment for a number of reasons. So that's the thing. I think the next step for moving forward would be to bring it to council before it goes back to board.
Thanks, Anthony. I'm just going to cut you off. John, was there something you were going to? Yeah, just I don't think that was voted on when divestment came out last year's board meeting, but there'd be public disclosure of the investment portfolio. Has that happened? I haven't heard anything.
Not to my knowledge. I don't know if there's been full conversation at the budget advisory committee.
I think you know as much as I know, or as the board members know, and I think at the board level, I don't know if anybody has held their feet to the fire. So that's something that I can definitely work on.
Yeah, I think that's just a matter of
ask probably.
Rebecca, was there something you wanted to add to that discussion?
I would just say at this point, the Board of Governors has made a decision on that motion that we had a year ago, and at this point, as a member of the Board of Governors, I fully support the decision that was made not to divest, but to increase the transparency of our investment portfolio.
Yeah, I guess. Sorry.
Okay. Thanks. Is there anything else to add?
No, so I wasn't at the board meeting. I did provide a little bit of an update. Anthony represented the DSU, and Rebecca as well, but verbally.
Good. Bart, do you have a question?
Just a quick one. Did last year the board vote to support the divestment movement as presented by the students?
Our council or the Board of Governors?
Our council specifically. The DSU from 2050 or whatever that was.
Yeah, so it's my understanding our council voted in favor of supporting divestment or the movement of divestment.
Okay.
That's what I understand.
John?
It happened, I think it was in the February, I think, Saudi Rajah was still the president that year, I think. So it picked up steam in the board a few months later, but it would have been a little less than 2 years ago.
We voted to divest last year. The
Yeah.
motion to support divestment was last year.
Regardless, the answer is yes.
Nazneen?
Are any one of you are graduate student or both of you are undergrad student?
I'm a professional student. I'm a medical student.
4th year student.
Okay. So there are a lot of things like graduate student and undergraduate students. Actually, a lot of variations are there. So how you are making sure that you are representing in the Board of Governors graduate student as well, or like you're serving for the best interest of the graduate student as well in the board of governors? How you're making sure that?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't think we have been particularly. I mean, a lot of the conversations that have been coming up have been, I think, not specific to any particular student or type of student. Like, one of the biggest things we've been looking at, especially, again, in light of a lot of recent events, is a lot of, like, mental health initiatives right now. So that's, I mean, I don't want to go on a long-winded thing here of what we have been doing. I don't think we necessarily have been. I think that if there are particular things of interest to graduate students, you know, maybe we can set up a time to chat. And again, I think part of that has been I haven't seen or, you know, come across anything necessarily pertaining to graduate students particularly, so that's maybe why I haven't jumped on that. But if there is something, if you'd like to be, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Because we are recently also talking on the mental health and wellness issue as well, when we are talking with the Faculty of Graduate Studies to work together for a proposal or some kind of that kind of format as well. So I don't know which direction you guys are advocating for and which direction we are thinking for. So I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, I'd love to chat about that. If there's one just very quick thing I can add. Yesterday there was a student experience committee meeting, and whatever happens in those meetings, unfortunately, is you know, not allowed to be disclosed. But I think you guys will be really excited about a lot of the initiatives that Student Services has been putting forward. A lot of them relating to mental health. A lot of them, honestly, covering a lot of things. I think, you know, by the time we get back together next semester, there will be a lot of things that a lot of people around the state will be interested in hearing and learning about.
And I think right now we're scheduling a meeting for, or not scheduling a meeting, but one of the council meetings in January. There will be a big update about what's been going on at the student board experience meeting, or the student experience board committee. Yeah. Particularly from the student services side of things. So we'll get some of the executive administrators from student services to come in and outline all of the different initiatives and how they're affecting students and some of the progress that they've made based on student feedback from last year and past years. So it's some really exciting stuff. I'm really excited to bring them in, or we're really excited to bring them in.
Bart and then John.
Just a really quick statement with regards to the fact that y'all want to bring back a motion to the board to discuss whether we should be supporting the investment or not. I understand that previous board motions are not binding on current boards, but I would also say having them not be influential is a very regressive kind of standpoint. So my opinion for y'all going forward, and take it for what it's worth, just one student's idea, is that going forward from what the board discussed last year, i.e. supporting it, is a much better idea than having it come back over and over and over again, because that is the more progressive idea. And unless we disagree with what happened last year, we should continue that trend. Yeah.
Do you mean the board or Dell? Or the
Sorry, I mean council, yeah, sorry, my language still isn't the best, but I think going forward with the council proposed last year is a better way of going forward with Board of Governors stuff than having it come back year over year. Unless it's rediscussed by council itself, I don't see anything wrong with continuing with proposals from previous years.
I'm just gonna field that really quick. I don't think what Anthony was proposing was that we rediscuss our support for divestment or for the divest movement.
Okay.
I think my understanding of what you were saying is having Divest Dal come in and present about like the progress they're making on something that we have supported already wholeheartedly. I don't know that we would do, like, we would bring that back for a vote. Like,
I apologize. My understanding was there hasn't been discussion moving forward because there hasn't been guidance from council yet. So I apologize if I just missed cross bars on that. I apologize.
Yeah, no worries.
Angela and then John and then Dylan.
I was just, I think my question is, do Board of Governors reps represent students in their individual capacity, or do they represent council to Board of Governors? I think that's a better.
Yeah.
Thank you. You take me off the list.
Okay.
yeah. So sorry.
Yeah.
Can I respond?
Yeah.
So that's a really good question. And when people are brought in and voted in as board members, the very first thing that the Board of Governors tells you or tries to tell you is like, you're not representing students, you're representing yourself and your own opinion and what's best for Dal overall. And they try really hard to separate the individual board members from constituencies or from this council. So I guess the official answer is, like, by standards of the board or by the board bylaws, no, we're not representing constituencies on that board. But I would say like that's
I would like to think that we represent council.
personally that's
Okay.
not how I carry myself as a board member. But
Okay, I think we should move on. Next up, we have the Senate caucus.
Right, I'll do that. So we don't have a formal report, as most of caucus was absent at the last meeting. But it's especially unfortunate because there was a presentation by Kevin Hewitt, who's the chair, alongside a few of our colleagues, including our Dylan Latondra, regarding Black and Indigenous issues on our campuses. So I can't speak to that, but we've reached out to Kevin and we're hoping to meet with him soon and kind of get like a debriefing and get up to speed there. But I think that Dylan can speak to the presentation a little bit about it.
Right, so the presentation was given by Kevin Hewitt and Amy Bombay. Amy Bombay is a Anishinaabe from Ontario. And the report was on how Dalhousie gives or disperses bursaries for Indigenous, Black, and Mi'kmaq students, analyzing the data and making recommendations on how they should change that. If I can recollect, the bare bones of the report was right now it's one pool of money. They're thinking about separating it 50-50-ish or proportionally, and that any unspent money from one side would get switched to the other side, so that anybody who's waitlisted from one side, and that just ensures that there's equal funding for both groups, and that one group doesn't take it all. There's a lot more to the presentation. They talked about the amount of students for either demographic who are first in their family, not first in their family. They talked about how many were from Nova Scotia versus from away. And that's a particularly interesting one because right now Dal, for the most part, offers most of their support for Mi'kmaq and Indigenous Black students. And so they were saying that there should be an additional amount of funding. So one of the things they were calling for was that so for example, earlier at Senate, Carolyn Waters, I think. One of the people who's always there. She was talking about facility renewals and how much money needs to be invested into upkeeping infrastructure at the university, that kind of thing, and that it's I think like 10 times or 5 or 10 times more expensive to address an issue if there's been a breakdown or if there's been a pipe breaks or something, and it's much more cost effective to invest in a situation before there's an issue. And that was drawn upon in the presentation on Indigenous, Black, and Mi'kmaq students. Also, Aboriginal students is what they were trying to talk about. Saying that there's a crisis here already, and it's worth investing in now before we have a big issue blow up later. And that Carolyn Waters was saying, what Dalhousie's, I think it was Carolyn Waters. I'll stop using that name. Whatever the lady's name was saying was that we need to invest way more. We're not investing enough. They were saying the same thing about the reports on Indigenous, Black, and Mi'kmaq students and Aboriginal students, that we need to be investing way more. Especially, so there needs to be an increase in funding. I think right now they're like 8% of their budget, and they need to increase it to 16% in order to meet the current need. And that wouldn't even start to address the fact that there's been underfunding for years and years and years. The presentation that I gave in advance of that was on the experience of Aboriginal students at Dalhousie. I spoke alongside 2 Black students, and they also gave very moving presentations about the experience of our 2 minority groups at Dalhousie. And from the Aboriginal student side, there's a vast majority of students, or quite a few students, who have parents, immediate family members who are survivors of residential schools or the 60s scoop, and who are dealing with that trauma on a daily basis. And so that's, I kind of spoke to what it's been like to be an Aboriginal student at Dalhousie, and it's not been neat, essentially.
Thanks, Dylan.
this?
Yeah, I just want to make sure the Senate caucus has finished their report and then we can proceed.
Okay,
into-
actually, it was a question to the Senate caucus, I guess. about-
Yeah, no, before we get into questions and answers, we will have that period. I have a few more Senate caucus members that might want to report, John.
Yeah, just one other committee report. I attended a meeting of the e-learning advisory committee. It's a subcommittee of the learning and teaching committee. And there's a big report on the current state of Dalhousie's networks. So the usage of Dalhousie's network has more than doubled in the last year. It's expected to double again next year. There's a lot of Netflix going on. So the main thing about this is that they floated the idea of a new technology fee, auxiliary fee that students might have to pay. So that might be a thing in the coming budget advisory committee. Suggested $10 that land on anything. So if you feel like adding a new fee to pay for the Wi-Fi, let me know what you think.
Everyone's in favor? Cool.
Are there any other senators that report from Senate caucus?
That's
Okay.
all.
Okay, thanks, Liam. So Michael, you're on the speakers list.
My question just is about that talk, and I just find it ironic that, so it was a talk, it was put on by the Senate caucus, right? Or who put it on? Who put on the?
You're talking about the one that I was at? It was a major Senate conference, like one of the main.
So was it just
If I'm not mistaken, he was not affiliated with the Senate caucus, though. Is that correct?
So, but who, like, for the talk and that there, who put the talk on?
So it was a report to Senate. It was the report that Amy and Kevin have been working on, and they were presenting their findings to Senate, so it was on the agenda. In advance of that, Amy and Kevin reached out to students and asked. I'm not sure if it was like a widespread thing. I didn't know that students were being asked to present until Sarah contacted me, said that there was another student who was going to be talking. They were busy and weren't able to attend, and asked if I was able to, so I said yes.
Does that answer your question, Michael?
Oh, well, no, just I want to make one point clear, that just the statement about when you're you bring things to the table and they're asking about how come things aren't working. I'm black chair rep, they never talked to me. I knew this was going on, but I didn't know people were talking in that there, so that's part of the problem. Is it's picked and choose who they talk to, and that's why. But yeah, that's just my statement.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Are there any other questions, comments on the Senate caucus report? Yeah, sorry, Bart. Yeah, you had your hand up.
John, when they bring up that auxiliary fee for Wi-Fi, I recommend presenting the last PowerPoint slide from the Gazette presentation last week and asking what exactly that $10 fee will do for us.
Thanks, Bart.
It was so good.
Okay, so next up, we have the Executive Review Committee. Jimena, you have that, and Jimena has also asked me to circulate the PowerPoint in advance of her presentation, and I advised her I would await a vote from council. Could I get a motion to circulate that then? Bart, seconded, Amber. All those in favor of circulating the PowerPoint presentation? Okay, I will circulate it to social passes. Yeah.
I just need to send.
Okay.
Just one sec, I'll send it.
Yeah, just
Okay. Jimena, you have the floor.
Hi, so I'm Jimena, I'm the chair for the Executive Review Committee, and this is like our presentation for the fall term. So first of all, Can everyone hear me? Louder? So what we did for fall term is we did an online survey. I don't know, like we distributed around council. I don't know if all of you guys filled that out, but we had a total of 60 responses, and it was open from October to the end of November. And we distributed online, as I said. And we first did a review of the executives as a whole, like a team, and then them individually. So as you can see, 60 responses is, we can do better, but yeah. Okay, so the first question was, do you know your DSU executives? So majority of people didn't know them, but there's a substantial amount that doesn't even know who they are and actually filled out the survey, so that's a thing to consider. And those people that replied no, they couldn't continue to the next questions because of course they didn't know the executives, so we couldn't ask them to fill out the next questions. So first question, executives as a team. How would you rate the performance of the DSU executives to the unified group? You can see there's a very well-defined thing. There were no like bad comments, but there's like good, outstanding, very good. And do you think that the DSU executives are keeping up with their promises they made during the election period? Not a lot of people strongly agree. Or around the agree, neither agree or disagree, and disagree. So that's also something to keep in mind. Also, I asked, do you think that the DSU executives are approachable as a team? So strongly agree and agree, so I think that's a positive thing. And how would you rate the team performance of the DSU executives? 5 mostly, some 3, or 5 was good, 1 was not that good. So yes. So now we get into like individuals. Like first the president. How would you rate the president's performance as a leader? So we can see very good comments, I think. Not really bad. And do you think the president justly represents the DSU as a whole? Also, usually and always were the most responded, and just 3% never. So that's good. So positive opinion. We had a section where like you could fill out additional comments, written additional comments. So positive opinions for the president. So these are things that the president should work more on. I feel like casual and transparent doing good job of bringing DSU to the people. A lot of people said that they see him around the DSU and talking to people. That's a positive thing. Good leader is staying on top of other people's jobs, so being good, delegating really well, and with commitment. He's very approachable, and he supports other executives, and they really like text the press. They feel that initiative is really nice. So some recommendations. More effort in representing the majority rather than the minority, so that's something to keep in mind. More connections. Not everybody knows what is happening. Sorry. No, all students know who he is. I mean, that's kind of, a lot of people say he is really known, other people say he's not really known, so like maybe bringing it to the people that are not really connected with the DSU is what needs to be addressed. More representation on Sexton campus, people thought. And more, like I said, some people thought he was really good delegate, but other people thought that what like the unified executives was reflected on the president. So more unification and more communication would be better to lead the group as a whole. So that was for the president. Now for the vice president internal. So do you think that the DSU properly reveals the different societies on campus? I thought it was a little bit more spread out with a lot of people, like 8% say never, rarely, sometimes. So maybe that's something to look at. Do you think that the DSU strategies to advertise such as the website are able to properly reach out to all students? No, never, so that was good. Not at all. Oh yeah, that's 10% not at all. So maybe something to look at. Not a lot of a great deal. So yeah. So positive opinions for the vice president internal. They said she was really approachable, active and enthusiastic, and they did say that she had a lot of representation on sex on campus, that they saw her here a lot, which was a really good thing. And recommendations. So more promotion at Carleton campus. They say that nobody's there and the DSU posters are like so old and they never see cabling or anything. DSU website needs to be more user friendly. Stronger communication with all society leaders. Like a lot of people said that they send emails and they never get an answer. A lot of society like
actually like executives say they never like they would like that faster communication because they don't want to be waiting a lot of time for emails to be responded, or maybe creating a way that's easier, maybe not email. I don't know what else would be better. Make gratifications easier. More effort towards societies that are not led yet. Like they said that there's too many attention on societies like Ennisburg and Loaded Ladle, and there needs to be more attention on maybe societies that are not led yet but also do a little great job. So next one, finance and operations. So we found that the auditing of levy societies just and properly done. 30% led always, so that's good. But yeah, no, anyway, we found that the DSU financial operations are done with transparency. Maybe a little bit of work to be done there. There was not a lot of a great deal, but still pretty good, I think. Some positive opinions, very approachable like everyone else, and willing to discuss finances. Some recommendations. Release of investment portfolio and making investment decisions more democratic, like talking to more people about them. Further funding. There were some like comments that I'm not sure how relevant these ones are, but I just thought it was like something to keep in mind. Further funding of DSU initiatives. Some people said that sexual assault line, for example, should be further funded. But then some people said that we don't know what the cost of these are and the justification because how many people are using it. Like, is this actually like worth our money, or should we look into any promoting other initiatives? Someone had an idea of having an interactive budget online that they could access really easily. Faster process of completing the audit and obtaining funding. They say it's kind of slow. And more communication with sites and students for decisions. So being like more communication about the finance and the operations. Academic and external. The team that the vice president advocates for all students. So kind of divided team. Do you find that the strategies of the vice president external to approach various students issues are appropriate and able to represent all students? Kind of divided. Pretty good. And some positive opinions. They were really happy that there was a lot of like issues related to social justice that they were being addressed, which was a really good thing. And there was a really firm presence in the Senate and academic realm, which is also a really positive thing. Responsible, and they said put outreach in contact with students. So some recommendations. More representation of the majority rather than the minority. So sometimes people felt that it was more like the minority than the majority. And with that comes efforts of making academics better for everyone and not just some group. Need to outreach to students of color as well as international students, more than other groups, but with other groups. Need for increased space support systems rather than lower tuition fees to improve accessibility. Use less, okay, none of this was in my words, okay, I'm just putting what people said, and I don't think like that, like hostile and unwelcoming environment, but like that's something to keep in mind, and maybe some people feel like some tactics are, I don't know, strong. Have maybe a more, people, I don't know like how good this is, but have a more neutral position, for example, to election. I know you are allowed to have your own personal opinion about who you want to vote for, but maybe having, like people felt like there was a lot of emphasis on personal political opinions. I'm not sure, maybe not. Anyways, Vice President of Student Life, she's not here, but I'll still say it. Do you think that the DSU events cater to a wide range of students? So a lot of people actually said, yeah, but some people, 10% said not at all, so that's still a lot of people. Do you find that there is a wide range of events that promote the inclusion of students from marginalized communities on campus? So a lot of people say a great deal, so that's really good. Some positive opinions for her. Experience, they say, because she has already been helping since like last year and she knows a lot about it. It's good that she's been creating conversations around substance use, content culture, and sexual violence. And she promotes fun events without compromising these issues of consent and social justice. And people say as well, like everyone else, she's really approachable and she's really genuine. Some recommendations though. I don't know, like the comments don't reflect what the pie chart did, but something to keep in mind. Too much effort on events that appeal only to a small group of people. There should be more efforts towards homecoming, varsity games, and concerts.
more attention to mature students or students with children. So like there's not a lot of events that cater to older people that are more mature and that have kids. Also less events that promote partying and rather other things, like have a more wide variety of events. More structure for event planning, not really sure what that means, but fine. More inclusive in terms of disability, race, marginalization, and students with dependence. So as well saying not just promoting to a specific group of people. And try to create an event. Okay, that number might not be true. I'm just putting out there, like I don't know what this person does that. But what I want to point out is that there should be events with high attendance instead of spending a lot of money in events that only like 30 people come. So that putting a lot of effort, maybe in less events, but that a lot of people come to the event. So some additional comments at the end. Positive, they were satisfied with the DSU exec. And they thought that the transparency was really good and they were representing students' voices. Some recommendations out, like maybe 2 people or more than that, said that there needs to be more representation at the law school, that they don't really see a lot of people there and they saw them feeling once, but that's it. More opportunities for students to get involved, less alienation. So a lot of students don't know how to be part of council or be part of like the DSU. Faster email response and making ratification for pre-existing societies easier and faster. So if you're already a pre-existing society and you've already done it, maybe make the process faster and the email response faster. And just closing remarks. You can never please anyone, I think, because like you just never can never please them. But I don't think that means that we shouldn't take these comments lightly. We should wear public service, and people are saying this, it must be for a reason. And I thought most of the comments, like people took time to actually fill out, which means they are really interested and they really want some things to be improved. And if you have any comments for the next executive review committee, you can email me. And I know we need to work on more things, but yeah, that's it. Questions and comments.
Thanks, Serena. Any questions, comments? Harry and then Dylan.
I just want to say, I know it was in the like recommendations or like negative section of like things to work on, but I think the fact that like multiple people had under that like prioritize the majority over the minority is like a good thing in terms of like this council is clearly prioritizing issues of like equity and social justice, and I think that's super important. I also think the phone line's a crucial service. So I just wanted to note those 2 things.
Thanks, Harry. Dylan, Ryan, and I got to start remembering the last name too. Dylan.
My thing is like, I'm kind of concerned that we have like, I know this isn't your job and everything, but like there's 60 students that filled it out, so I feel like it weights it super strongly on people that either have like huge problems or are super involved in the DSU or something like that. That like average students aren't filling it out. So like, I don't know if we could do a better job in the winter one of like reaching constituencies, trying to get them to fill these out. Because like, yeah, a lot of those things I saw were like very nitpicky or like, I feel like one person put those like comments in and it's like, I don't know.
I think that also is something to speak of though. That a lot of the students that are just regular students don't even know who they are. So it was hard to get people to fill it out because people don't actually know it. We sent an email to all societies and I put it in like the Facebook groups and like it's just hard for. I asked my friends and my friends don't know anything about this. They're like, why would I fill it out?
Yeah.
You know, I don't even know anything. My feedback will be pointless. So I'm not saying I think more people should have filled it out, but I'm just saying also like it's a problem also of people not knowing what the DSU is in the first place. So it's hard to get people to ask, and the people that are going to respond are going to have very extreme comments because they are in here, right?
Yeah.
Or they're really involved.
Exactly.
That's something that's like a deeper problem, I guess.
True.
Yeah.
Okay, Dylan LeCondre.
I'm going to support what both of you guys said. I would like to commend Dan for representing the minority, not the majority, because it was something I was worried about going into this year, and I felt very, very well supported. And again, I think that the majority generally has the status quo, and that equity is something that should be part of your portfolio. And in support of what other Dylan said, I'm drawing a blank on what that was. Right, reaching out to more students. So, for example, I'm the president of the Amnesty International Society. We love talking to governments and talking and information information, that kind of thing. That being said, I'm pretty sure talking to most of the students who are in that society would also say, like, we have no idea what the DSU Council does. So if you had sent us an email saying, hey, we would like to meet with your group, and I can explain any answers, right, then I could have set up a meeting to facilitate you to come to our group. I can understand it would be difficult to meet with every group, but that's a strategy that might be effective.
Yeah. But I also think we sent out emails, and people should also be responsible for, if they want to provide comments, I'm here to provide comments. Nobody reached out to me, which is I feel like I know I am the one who's responsible for it, but the fact that people don't have interest for it, it's like I can't force, I'm not gonna go meet everyone. And not, people are gonna be like, oh, you didn't come meet me, you did, like, why don't you want to represent the majority of the minority, you know, like, it's just a problem of, like, people don't reach out either, so it's hard to get people to fill out something that they don't want to fill out in the first place.
Quick response to that, we're physically students.
Bart? Not to put too fine a point of it, but I just wanted to correct what Dylan said about 60 people filling the survey out. Really, it was 40, because 20 people self-selected out by not knowing who the executives were. Is it 20? Is it oh, wow.
No, you're right.
No, you're right.
Hey, that's never happened before. So, the 0.2% response rate to me basically says that nothing that we learned is of any real value, and it's not your fault. Like, I totally admit that it's the fact that students aren't filling it out, and tonight's obviously not the best time for it, but we really do have to have a conversation as a council and as an executive as to how to make more people give a flying swear word that I'm not supposed to use about what we do. Because if we can't get any feedback, then we're flying blind, and that's not good. Though I just want to say that even though it's like statistically insignificant, I find it fascinating that the majority of people who filled these surveys out said that there was too much response for the minority and not the majority, which seems bizarre to me because the people who care about that I think would fill this kind of thing out. But then also said that overall, y'all were doing a good job. It's really bizarre, and I'd love to see the metrics of how that broke down. But yeah, basically, it's not your fault. But nothing of this is of any real statistical significance, and we need to figure out a way to make the next one way better as a council.
Great, thanks, Bart. Next up, I have Angela and then Michael.
Yeah, so I have two questions. The first one is, what did you mean by don't know your execs? Like, you might not know them personally, but you know like the work they do, and that might be taken as, so that you might lock people out of going further by saying, well, I don't know, maybe I don't know Dan personally, but like I know what he's doing. Like that could also be a thing. But I also do agree with everyone that has talked about saying that like this is a very small sample size. But what was my second point? Crap, I'm so sorry. I think my second point was just like how much how did you pick the comments that you put in your slideshow? Like, were they things that were like a consistent trend over the 40 or so people that replied, or were they like one thing someone said?
Well, firstly, your first comment that was like, yeah, it's true. Like, questions need to be worded better, and like I think this was a learning process for like the community as a whole, and that's true. Like, I just thought about that. That's true. But I don't know. You guys said that it's not significant. I still think it's significant because it's still people answering. It's still people having legitimate answers, and I think if people feel that way, then we shouldn't just take it lightly. And yes, it is not statistically significant because the whole like university is more than that students, but also like if you go ask to the majority of the university students, do you know who your DSU executives are? Like, who do you know what the DSU does? I think most people would not know, so that's also an important part. And then to your second point,
sorry. Can we just respond? Can I just ask you something? I think our point is that like you're prioritizing a very, very small voice, and like what can we do to get a bit better representation?
That's true, but it's really hard to force people to do something they don't want to, right?
Definitely,
and it's hard to like. I mean, it was advertised, like
it was, yeah.
It's not like it was like to a specific minority was sent out just to the people that I wanted it to send out. It's like the problem about people reaching out to their societies, people reaching out to everybody they represent, being like, hey, please fill this out.
Yeah, and like I personally have done that to DAS, and
I'm sure a lot of people here have done that too. So like not a comment on your or the committee's like performance, like not a comment on that. My second point before was
comments.
Yeah, comments. Yeah.
Well, not everybody actually wrote comments, but the people that wrote comments, I took. Of course, there were still really bad ones, like people just saying swear words and stuff. But anyways, I didn't take those. I took the ones that I felt like actually like made sense and were related to the job that they were supposed to be doing, and also they were like people said that thing twice.
Okay.
Different people
so
said
it was
that.
something
Or
that was like a trend.
Or like different ones, like that I was like, okay, the one with children with dependents, like that's true.
Okay, guys.
There's no that events for children for students with children, you know.
Sorry to interrupt. We have a long speakers list, so let's try and keep things question answer to a minimum. I have Michael and then Rebecca up next.
Okay, I'm wondering if maybe, I don't know how, if that was your wording or the wording that was used, but I'm wondering if maybe the representing the majority rather than the minority we might be looking at it wrong. And the majority and minority might be that they're saying or they're feeling that the execs are too focused on one group, but not a minority group as in a good thing, but just in as like the inclusion of like the people in this, like, you know, if the same focused on the council group and those ones are directly in. Because I've been reading it differently. I hear everybody else saying that way, and I keep flipping it open. I'm like, no, I don't think so, because I believe what Bart said that it would be a positive if they were talking about that minority. So I'm wondering if they're just saying that they're just too focused on one group, which, you know, you're going to get that from whoever's not part of that group. That's a normal. The other thing that I'd like to say is that I kind of disagree with everybody that's saying it's so small, blah, 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 it doesn't count. One voice can tell you if you're doing something wrong. And what the biggest voice that we hear from this is the people that are silent, that have not talked. They either don't care, they think we're doing a great job. I don't think that's true. Like, I don't think with like all that mass, everybody but those, you know, think we're just phenomenal. Or the other big thing is that there's a whole lot of work to reach them, and I know it's not it's hard to throw that one out there and go, okay, but I don't have the answer on how to do that. Maybe looking at functions or something, whatever, to get it out there and do it, the survey that. But I think the big telling thing of this, and I think it was a really good thing that it was done. I think it was a lot of work put into it, but I think it's very telling the fact that we only got that response, because I just can almost just see just certain like few little people filling it out and that there. So, and I think it's more for us. We have to look at what we can do to make it go different.
Thanks,
yeah, and like part of that minority-majority thing too, like we don't know what they actually meant. They might have been, we don't represent the majority, meaning like the marginalized groups, which are the majority. Like you can't say that the majority is like everyone else who's not of color, who's not LGBTQ. They might be talking that they didn't represent those groups of people. So like it's something about representing everyone, not just a small group. It's not about minority-majority. Nobody was saying, oh, don't represent the women, don't represent the people of color. So people are just saying represent everyone.
Okay, so next up I have Rebecca and then Yuzan.
First, I just say thank you for doing this. I'm sure this took a lot of work for you and the committee that were involved. That's really great. I think most of us can agree that this is a really important kind of survey to have done so that we can get a good idea of what students think. And I think that we should maybe encourage like council or the committee to think in the future about having like some kind of incentive for students to do the survey, and then also having some kind of honorarium for you guys for putting a lot of hours into this. And I don't think we can expect you to go that much more above what you did for this survey, like when you're just a volunteer, you're a student. Just to think about for the next time.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Just say something quick. Just to say to that, like, this is also a learning process. I'm not saying that from now on we're just going to keep doing the same thing. We of course want more people to answer. That's why I want like to know what you guys think, how to get it to people that don't want to answer in the first place. It's hard to say, okay, this was not good enough, but like, how do we get it to people to answer more?
So next up I have Yuzan and then Kaylee.
Could we go back to the slide that shows how many students are the execs and how many don't? That's okay. So 68% no execs. I'm just having trouble like discerning the colors there.
68% said no.
They do.
68% do,
They
and
do.
32% do
Yeah,
not.
don't.
Thanks, Suzanne. I apologize. So next up, I have Kaylee and then Jad.
So just two things. One, just to let folks know that the Governance Review Committee has talked about the role of the Executive Review Committee and has had some discussion about it that I imagine will continue. One of the things that's been discussed is that there actually needs to be a set of parameters on which the Executive Review Committee is judging executives on. There is actually no parameters, and so it kind of varies from year to year, and there actually needs to be a narrowed scope of what is being evaluated so that that is done in a fair way. And then the second thing is, like, Ben has been doing a great amount of work and a lot of things, and I think it's important to recognize that it is actually part of the responsibility of the faculty and community societies around the table to distribute these kinds of things and fill them out yourself. Get your executives to fill them out. And if you feel like there's not extensive knowledge about the DSU at your council or at your committee executive or committee your society executive or council, the executive and the student union is always willing to do presentations on what the DSU does, is always willing to come in and talk about the activities of the student union. And so maybe that's something that we can consider in the winter, is that the DSU can kind of go do like a bit of a caravan across all of the faculty societies and community societies to kind of present on what's been happening.
Thanks, Kaylee. I have Jad and then
I have a few quick questions. So just first, I want to comment on what Kaylee just said about presentations. I think that could be somewhat problematic if we have members of the DSU going around telling people what the DSU does and like framing it in a way to be like, the DSU does such and such and such in a positive way, and then being like, now please review my executive. I just don't think it would necessarily be unbiased, and I think you can flag that as saying the DSU is getting people or telling people what the executive does rather than.
Can I just correct? It's not. I'm not saying that those should be the same thing. I'm just saying that maybe one thing that should happen is that the DSU executive should do presentations at societies as a just general thing in the beginning of the term, and this survey wouldn't happen until the end of the term. I'm not saying that they should happen at the same time. Just like if your society doesn't know what the DSU does, maybe someone should come in to talk about what the DSU does.
Right. That's a lot better. So what I did want to say though is that I don't think that this necessarily is a small sample, because who we are supposed to be sampling is the group of people who can speak directly to the executive, and I think that that's a small sample to begin with. So we're not necessarily sampling from 18,000 people. We're sampling from the people who know the DSU and their jobs directly, and I think those are the people who can speak best to the executive. And I think that if we really wanted people to comment on what the DSU executive does generally, then we ought to ask questions not about what, say, for example, the VPI is doing, but rather about an event that the VPI or an initiative that the VPI has done. So we can say, how did you find, our DSU website, and then we can interpolate from that to say this is what the VPI has done well or poorly, and like similarly, how did you find this event that the VPSL has done, and then we can say, okay, the VPSL has done this well and this poorly, rather than us asking specifically, do you know the VPSL, and do you know what they have done in this position, and was it good? Because we're not going to get sort of so I think it's just more effective to ask about initiatives or like some things that they have done that students may very well identify with, rather than us asking about a specific person. And that sort of can alleviate issues like, do you think this person's stance is like politically justified? Because their work may not be politically skewed, but everybody's entitled to their own political opinion. So I might be very right wing, and then my work isn't necessarily reflecting that. And I think that's what I should be evaluated on, not just who I am personally.
Thanks, Jed. Next up, I have Yvette.
I have two things to mention. We can have this survey for a little longer. Students are forgetful, and I have a lot of people in my society that forgot to fill it out. So just if we could have extended it maybe until end of exam period, and a few weeks after that, and then probably would have had a few more people, and just sending out reminders. I reminded them twice, and one of the members actually came up to me yesterday to tell me that she tried filling it out, but then halfway through through, it stopped, like she couldn't. So there was probably some technical difficulty there, but it was only brought to my attention yesterday and the poll was already over. So like I'm just saying students are forgetful in habit and they're lazy and late. So if we can just extend it a little bit longer, that probably would be more helpful.
I think.
Sorry, one more thing. I wouldn't have known the DSU members unless I was part of this council, and a lot of people on my faculty don't know anything about you guys. The society is the only people that do know about the DSU, so that is your representatives for this survey. So, and I agree with Jad that 40 people is a good number, and these are the ones that actually know about you, but the ones that don't know about you, they're not going to fill out these surveys. So like, I don't know, my side has like 10 members, so that's pretty much what you're going to get out of a 100 and something kind of faculty size.
Yeah, for the first one, like extending it, I think it was open for a while because it was October to November 25th, and the girls couldn't fill it out because it was called November 25th. But like, we couldn't start until October because not all the committee members were they were not committee members appointed by October, and then we need to do it for the fall term, so before we go to exams, you know?
Yeah.
So like,
maybe that's something to consider for like, I don't know, next term.
yeah, to
And
make it
yeah,
earlier.
if it's longer, then you can reach out to more people and kind of send these like reminders.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt. Dylan, I know you had your hand up, and then Alexandra. Okay, Alexandra.
I was gonna say I really like the idea of having like a small incentive, like a $10 gift card.
Yeah.
Because I know we get a lot of SPSQ surveys and people know if there's something.
That's a good idea too. Yeah.
Okay, thanks everyone, thanks Amanda. Moving on to the agenda. Next up, we have new business, and that is the revised budget. The result of the revised budget be approved as circulated. I have that moved by McBoober. Is there a seconder for that? Dylan? McBoober, do you want to move it for it, please?
Dylan Ryan?
Yes, Dylan Ryan. Thank you.
Yes, in the last council meeting, I presented the revised budget, and within these 2 weeks, I received a few comments and clarification. I think there is no major suggestion of change in the budget, so I think it's the time to pass the budget.
Thanks, McBoober. Okay, open up the speakers list. Or seeing none. Yeah, Bart.
This is the same thing I said last year, so I'm sorry if I repeat myself. Having a budget that is inaccessible to the majority of students is not particularly democratic and not subjective to a lot of the rule of law stuff that you listen about as far as making sure everybody knows what they're paying for and why they're paying for it. I understand that the summary budget is, in my opinion, that is not satisfactory to the majority of students' needs. And so I think we should vote down the budget until we get a more transparent version.
Thanks, Bart. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to a vote for the budget. All those in favor of the revised budget as circulated, please raise your hands. Okay, all those opposed? Any abstentions? Yeah, sorry, I'm not asking for that. I don't know why I did. We stopped that practice, sorry. It's been a long few days. Okay, so the motion passes. And moving on with the agenda, business of the executive. Dan, you have the floor.
Yeah, sure. Given that it is 8:25, I probably won't go into great detail. My report actually was kind of light this time around as well, which is much different than my normal report, so as many of you noticed. I was on conference for the majority of the last 2 weeks, and it was great. I got to network with a lot of great folks nationally. I got to take part in a lot of really, in my opinion, monumental conversations, specifically around shaping, not necessarily shaping, but talking about what's on the national level in terms of students and things like mental health, or things like, well, specifically I was heavily focused on the mental health side of things, I guess, but you'll see from some of the other executives what some of the other conversations were like as well, so that was really good. I also got a really good opportunity to network with some Dal students. There was a constituency of, I think, 11 Dal students that went to one of the leadership conferences from different pockets of the university, not from the DSU. But it was great because I got to meet some student leaders that I wouldn't have otherwise met and form some of those connections. And now moving forward, it's stronger bonds with the Career and Leadership Center, the Res Life Council, I think, or Res Life sent a couple of students. So some really interesting conversations and networking opportunities there. So that was great. And then in the rest of my report, there was just some of my some of the things that I did this week and some of the people that I talked to. Moving forward, I think in the second semester, something that I will be trying to undertake, and I do just want to stipulate that sometimes it is really difficult to catch time to do this kind of stuff because, well, we just to note, we don't work with any administrative assistants personally or through the executive. So all the emails that we answer, that's on us. All the scheduling of appointments, that's all on us individually. And so hearing about email response times, that resonates with me because I hate when people don't respond to my emails within a matter of a couple of days, and I try my best to respond within a matter of a couple of days. But sometimes it's tough when you're getting an intake of 200 to 250 emails a day, while also trying to attend appointments, while also trying to go to class, while also trying to do things that we say that we're going to do. So that was outlined in sort of my report, is catching up on emails and meeting various people. But sorry, moving forward, I think for the second semester, what I want to do, and it's something that I had talked about in my campaign platform, is give maybe a brief this week in 60 seconds and what my week looks like in a very short video or a very short audio clip or something like that that I'll just upload to my Facebook page. I don't know if folks will find that helpful, but I'm going to do it anyways. And also, there was something else that I was just going to say, and now I forget. But yeah, my report was circulated, and you can take a look. And if anybody has any questions about, what I learned on conference, I'd be happy to go into detail at some other time that's not around this council table, or maybe we can set a specific time aside around this council table. That's what I got.
Thanks, Jen.
Yep.
Questions? Okay. Next up, Caitlin.
All right, so moving to the Society Hub is set to start next week, which is really exciting. Did a tour of the space today, and it's coming along really great. I think everyone's gonna be really excited about it. Phone line, the hiring process for the phone line coordinator has been continuing. The posting's gonna be up for another week, so please share it among your networks. We are having a Lunch and Learn event on December 8th from 12 to 2 p.m. at South House for interested volunteers or anyone who wants to know more about the phone line, more about what it takes to be a volunteer and what a volunteer for the phone line actually does and what the phone line actually does. So again, that is December 8th, 12 to 2 at South House. There's an event on Facebook. Met with the Dallas Student Life communications team to look at how we can better streamline our efforts. A lot of the committee work for the SRC and Grants Committee has been wrapping up. Having a meeting with SRC tomorrow to outline a Grand Residence Council to hopefully better facilitate communication and accountability and operations of residence councils. The final, right now we are in a transitional room booking process. I understand it's a nightmare, but in January we are hoping to, or the university is hoping to unveil their brand new system that is to work across the board from everything from academic bookings to student bookings and ratified society bookings. This system will allow everyone to go on and see in real time what rooms are available on what dates. It also will have a list of every single room that you can book on campus. And has a system where you just go online, you input the room you want based on its availability, and you're set and good to go from there. Still working on the ombudsperson office with the university, laying down terms of reference and the job proposal. Also working on some good news for the food bank is that we have raised enough money to get an industrial freezer, which will mean that we are allowed to keep more food, we're able to keep it longer, we're able to have more produce available, so that is really exciting. And that is, I guess, the main highlights of some of the projects, just trying to wrap up some things and get new things started for the January semester start.
Thanks, Caitlin. Any questions for Caitlin? Okay, seeing none, next up, Ruber.
Yes, I'll not take that much time. I think most of what I'm doing is the report. On top of that, wrapping up the fall semester, making sure everyone is working, getting paid, or every invoice. I've done a lot of regular day-to-day works this time of the year. I think not need to mention, but on top of that, we had In Bob's, we discussed about the investment review report and of course the financial policies. Those will come up sometime in January in the council. And thank you for passing the revised budget.
Thanks, Weaver. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, next up, John.
All right, first things first, get the holiday spirit. We brought you Halloween candy.
There's never ending Halloween candy.
I bought 2 superstores worth on November 1st.
Two superstores worth, like the
Yep.
entire.
That.
All the Santa stuff. 3 TVs, but it's a special night tonight. It's the last council of the season. Sorry the report's late. I won't say it all because you have it right in front of you, but I'll just add a few points. We attended 2 staff as well as Dan and I, so Kaylee and Sarah's, the 2 staff that went to the National General Meeting of the Canadian Federation of Students as observers to see what was going on there. There's 3 things I want to highlight that were really cool. One was a panel called Organizing Around the World. So they had folks come in from the European Students Union, the United States Student Association, and the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa. That was involved with the Fees Must Fall movement, which successfully beat back some tuition fee hikes there. That's on the brink of winning free tuition, as well as some cool mobilization in the US and how more than 15 countries in the EU have managed to win free tuition and keep it. So just learning from them was really cool. The group called the National Aboriginal Caucus, which is within the Federation, has expanding their lobby documents around implementing the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's reports, in addition to pushing for removing the 2% cap on existing Indigenous funding. So there's some really exciting stuff coming out of that group. And there's also, we got to meet the new Federal Minister for Labour and Workforce Development, which is the federal equivalent of like the Advanced Education Ministry. And so she sort of presented on the Liberal Party's platform, and we got to ask her some questions. A lot of the questions focused around the post-secondary student support program for Indigenous education, making sure it affects not just unreserved status Indians, but all Indigenous people. So that's sort of where the conversation went, but also a little bit about the promise to implement $750 million per year in new student grants. So we're going to try to help the Liberals count on that pie. Also very exciting, we've been free coffee on sex and cancer every Monday now, so we did that this Monday. That's going to be an ongoing thing. Moving down a bit, on the 19th of November we went to the legislature to table 1,584 postcards in support of Bill 114, the Safe Campuses Act. More than 1,000 of those postcards were signed by Dow students, that was really exciting. So that's a photo of us at the legislature there. The Dell census is ongoing, so if you haven't filled that out, please do. It's like 10 questions. It asks you some very simple questions, but it gives the university a lot of good data that they can use to implement a lot of their equity-based reports. So if you haven't filled that out, please do. Be counted. Just yesterday, in partnership with the Muslim Students Association, we hosted an event called I'm a Muslim, Am I a Terrorist? Which is trying to push back against some of the racism we're seeing in society following the Paris attacks, as well as bring the racist poison that was being spilled during the federal election around things like the niqab debate. There's been a lot of cases of attacks against Muslim people in Montreal and Toronto, so we want to be proactive in fighting discrimination on Dow campus. Some information I heard from other universities is that there's apparently a deadline of December 18th for universities to submit their tuition resets, which is really interesting because Dow wouldn't have a Board of Governors meeting to approve any fee increases until at least February. So if that's the case, oops, Dow. On the 18th, we went to the legislature as well. We tabled 4,000 petition signatures in support of needs-based grants, reducing tuition fees and increased core funding. A lot of these petition signatures were gathered back in the winter on the February 4th day of action, and we just tabled them for the fall session. So we had more than 4,000. That was really exciting. Because Dell's tuition reset for the time was probably going to be in the engineering, pharmacy, and agriculture program, we've been focusing on outreach on the engineering campus right now. So on the 19th, we had a lunch and learn here in the Tea Room, a free pizza, talked about affordability of education issues. So about 80 people showed up. It was really great. So thanks to the folks from DSU that helped organize that. There was an action at the NASCAD Board of Governors organized by their student union. Their tuition fee increases are 37% under this tuition reset. So some folks in the DSU came to sort of support that. And it was supposed to be a silent action against the fee increases escalate. NASCAD, unlike Dell, does not have public board meetings. They're 100% in camera. So the students said, we want to go in, we want to watch, you're going to increase tuition fees by 37%. You should just have the courage to do it in front of us. And they said, no, we're not doing that, so they shut down the meeting. So it's totally peaceful, nonviolent, but they shut down a Board of Governors meeting, which is pretty cool to watch, actually. So yeah, that bought the students a bit more time. We're going to sort of plan some more action against that, so we'll sort of see what we can do to help as that develops. But there's also a photo of that, and it's really cool. I did 2 articles in the Gazette and the Sextant on tuition fee increases, and just education funding in general. If you look at this week's Sextant, has the wrong headline, but other than that, apparently I write about synergy in tech and STEM. And a few upcoming things. One is that we're meeting with the Department of Labor Advanced Education this Friday to talk about the Memorandum of Understanding that sets tuition regulations and among other things. Also with folks from the international students, we're meeting with LAE on the same day to talk about international students' workers' rights. I mean, the DSU exec has a lot of hiring committee meetings for the next registrar and the next VP, Vice Provost Student Affairs. So there'll be a lot of meetings with presentation of candidates. That'll take a lot of our time. And the biggest thing is December 14th. That's when Senate reform is going to Senate for a vote. So I'm really excited for that. A little preparing from that will be substantial work. Thanks, John. Sorry, you did? Sorry. Questions?
Okay, Kathleen unfortunately did have to leave for a meeting, but she indicated that you should contact her if you have any questions. Next up, notices of motion. Yes, Caitlin.
I have 3 notices of motion. One to amend grants policy, a motion to strike on equity and accessibility steering committee, and then do you want to amend that?
Yeah, I also have a notice of motion. Yeah, so just a notice for council to refer proposed bylaw amendments to the Board of Operations, and just like was outlined in the timeline.
Thanks, Ted. And I'll make sure to, yeah, you said.
I was wondering, last meeting I also noticed the motion.
You did, yeah.
Up until that would, address what the IRC noted.
Yep.
But I noted that that would happen after the Bob's discussed it, so is that still?
Yeah, sure, especially, if you're bringing it up again now, so everyone knows, sounds good. And I'll make sure to remind everyone about those 3 to 4 then all together in my email in the new year. Any other notices of motion? Okay, announcements. Harry, and then,
South House, in partnership with our Resilient Bodies Collective, putting on a week-long series of events next week, the 7th to the 11th, around providing an alternative to the mainstream body positivity movement. Check out some of the events on Facebook. There's like 10 of them. There's like a brunch, there's a yoga, there's like a dance, there's a nude drawing. There's lots.
One of the things that I brought up in Senate was the absence of an elder in residence program at Dalhousie. The university responded very quickly, and starting yesterday, we now have an elder in residence from 11:30 to 1:30 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. They're primarily for the Aboriginal students, but they're also, one of the students in my Indigenous Studies class was a non-Aboriginal person asked, what can we do to support Aboriginal students? Learn the culture, and so you are welcome to drop in, ask questions, start learning about our culture. That's a great thing to do. In addition, the Amnesty International Society is holding a meeting for any society, any group that's doing work having to do with human rights, based on the premise that we belong to a community of practice. We're all working on common issues, and we should be talking and coordinating. So we're going to be having a meeting for all those organizations. If you belong to any of those groups, or if you know somebody who is, make sure that your group is represented at this meeting. That's going to be happening at the end of January. If you have any questions, contact me for the Amnesty International Society, the Oxfam Society, or NSPERG. All 3 groups are involved in planning the meeting.
Okay, can I just ask a quick question? Is the elder in residence also available if societies or the DSU are looking for an elder to do a welcoming or an opening?
Yes, so they put together a policy and a protocol on what to use the elder for, that kind of thing, and how to approach the elder, how to go about doing that. Jerry Musqua LeBlanc is the contact elder, and so if you go to her with your request, she'll help you to interpret the policy and go about doing that. I know that if you contact Diana Lewis or Diana Campbell, who's the chair of the Indigenous Studies minor, she'll help put you in contact with Jerry.
pointing out, point of clarification. There's also an elder residence for the law schools. These are separate, okay?
Yes.
So in case any of the law students are leaving, I think it's the same thing. Two separate things.
Dan?
Yeah, cool. Just a couple of things. Number one, DSU radio show tomorrow. Kathleen and I are from Jack. I'll be also on the radio show tomorrow, so you hear me talk on things, I suppose. It's at 11, I believe, on CKDU. It's like 90.1. 80.1, sorry. The student radio show in my hometown is 90.1, so apologies.
This is your hometown now.
Well, I know, you're right. Second piece, so we did ask everyone to wear pajamas today, and I see everybody complied except for Harrison. So I had 3 Tim's cards to go to people with the best pajamas or onesies, but I'm going to give them all 3 to Harry.
I went to the washroom to put this on so you would.
Sorry, are you wearing onesie right now?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
She wears it all the time.
Sorry, the lower half of you is completely covered. I can't see anything.
I'd like to say to that though, nobody else was sitting here taking fabulous selfie shots with the onesies. That's why I was losing it over there.
Right, all right. I'll approach you two after council.
Also, Michael has this combo Dal tracksuit.
I am the ultimate Dal sleep student.
Done. All right, all 3 accounted for. That's great. Another announcement, the DSU staff party is this Saturday. You're all invited. There's like some free things, some really great free things that I'm not going to really talk about at the council table. You have to RSVP, so just send an email and just be like, hey, I'm coming. You would have got an email invite. It's in the tea room, so that might give a hint as to what things are free, maybe. There's also going to be, tea, of course.
Can we send an email too? Like, just send one?
Yeah, just send
It's in the instructions. Read your email.
I didn't get an email.
The society executive email.
Yeah, that's that.
It's short.
Yeah. I also wanted to acknowledge a couple of things that were on my radar this week, really quick. Thanks to Dylan Latondra for bringing up some issues regarding the Native Counseling Education Unit that we're working on currently. So that's excellent. Thank you. I also wanted to say thanks to Derek from DUS, who's been, over the last 4.5, 5 weeks, constant messaging back and forth to get a few different things up and running for Section Campus, including the coffee stuff that John had talked about, as well as some bike center stuff. So some really exciting stuff on the go. And Yasan as well is working hard to getting, and Caitlin as well, to getting a web page up and running for the Section Advisory Committee, so that's super cool. Also, looking at, I'm in talks with some folks from medicine and from dentistry, and I wanted to talk to you folks after this council meeting about forming a professional students, sort of, not grand council, but it would actually be a small council of 5 people or 6 people. So that's also really exciting, and looking forward to talking to you folks. And thanks to all you awesome counselors. We had a great first semester. We're gonna have an even better second semester. I really enjoyed it.
Any other announcements? October, I think you had your hand up?
No, I think that covers.
Okay, motion to adjourn. Caitlin, second Amber. All those opposed?
I want to stay here forever.
Amazing.